All right. So once more, hello everyone. Welcome to the webinar. We're very happy to have you here, and yeah, I'm very happy to have as our speaker today, Monica Dieter, who will present us all the nice successes that the Initiative for Science in Europe has had, and will show you all the nice ways also where we were able to contribute to make an input in science policy. So yeah, Monica, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sebastian and Pille, for this invitation. I'm very honored to speak to so many people from Eurodoc. So thank you, everybody, for being there. I will very briefly present myself. Then I will very briefly present ISC, summarize the main actions we are currently driving. And I will give you a little insight on how to do science policy, or let's say science diplomacy. So that's how I have no slides. This is a choice because I believe people listen better when there are no slides. And so you'd have to pay attention. And the last message I want to give is whenever you need to interrupt me, please do so. I hope Sebastian and Phil will manage it because on my small screen, I will not be able to look at the comments or questions at the same time. So there is no problem. This must be very informal and very convenient way to have an exchange. So very briefly on my profile, I'm Monica Dietl. I used to be a scientist. I have done a bit more than 30 years of research in neuroscience. Then, of course, I had a little path where as researcher, it took me quite a while to have a real contract. That is maybe a little item which I may speak about this a bit later again. And then I was requested to enter the so-called European affairs. That means for many years, I have been helping researchers to build up projects, to submit those, and to be successful in getting funds out of the European Union. Of course, the idea basically is also that when you get funds and you get a project funded, this gives you already a better insight on how policymaking is ongoing in between the institutions in the European Union. So sorry, I always advise that you take up the challenge of being a coordinator or at least a co-coordinator of a collaborative project. This is the best way to learn how things run. And in particular, the coordinator is the person who is in contact with Commission people once the project is up and running and all this stuff, which is then ongoing to manage such kind of projects. You have other tools, which I will not mention tools today on how to get into the European cooperative possibilities the European Union is offering. So if you have questions, we can maybe, if we have time, discuss this a bit later. But it was just to continue. I had the opportunity to build up a lot of projects and with a quite high success rate at that time. And then I switched to European policy and had the opportunity to go to Brussels, where I represented the CNRS for several years. And that gave me the opportunity to work in the Commission for 4 years as a so-called external national expert, where I had the opportunity to work on building up the European Research Council. So it was very exciting. And another job which I always like to highlight because it is a different nature, which is costs. I was director of Cost Cooperation for Science and Technology, which is a program which is wider than European Union, but I will again not enter into the details, but it is an intergovernmental program. And that's what is interesting because I had to work with the ministries entitled to represent their country in cost. And this where I underline this because there were many research ministries, but also sometimes some countries choose to put the innovation ministries. Why? Because cost has the S for science and the T for technology, and it really bridges science and technology and public and private research activities. So that's to give you a little overview. And then I had the opportunity to work 3 years in Paris at the French Research and Innovation Ministry, which gave me really an insight on how a ministry faces the difficulties of building up a strategy in a big country. Of course, it represents other challenges to a smaller country, which has other challenges also. So I was a bit long, but I have a long life, so that's the first thing. Then I joined most recently in September last year, ISC, Initiative for Science in Europe. Why is it called like that? Because it was an initiative from researchers. It started with the life science community, and then it was joined by all other research communities in all fields of science and technology, but was very much on science. That's why the initiative was called Europe Initiative for Science in Europe. And the basic motivation of those many thousands or 10,000s of people was that we wanted a new program to be built up by the European Union, which would fund one, first basic research, secondly, on the base of a unique criterion, which would be the science quality or excellence. And the third condition, what it should be investigator driven and for individual investigators. And that is what became the European Research Council. So this was the main objective at the very beginning of Initiative for Science in Europe. I would like to underline here that over the many years, it was in the early 2000s, so ISE is near to 20 years old now. And for the many, many years it has been now functioning, it has had high-level people as presidents, which is something which merits to be underlined, because there was José Mariano Gago, which was a Portuguese physicist, a researcher, high-level researcher, but who became also minister in Portugal and was then extremely active in science policy towards the European Union institutions. The next one was Julio Celis, who was a Spanish researcher working in a Danish center of research on cancer research. The next one was Federico Mayor Zaragoza, who was at that time the Secretary General of the UNESCO. Then we had Maria Leptin as president of ISE, who left because she was appointed president of the European Research Council. And currently we have Martin Antler, who is a renowned mathematician and historian of sciences, who is president, under whose presidency I'm working. So you show that ISE has always motivated high-level people because it was representing the research base. That means that many associations in Brussels, and I'm stepping to the next, a little bit already to the next topic I wanted to highlight, is the many associations, most of them represented in Brussels, who try to have an influence or to have a say towards the European institutions are, let's say, hire people to do the work on behalf of the organizations or individuals who are members of their associations. In ISE, we have another philosophy, which is based on this very first and early initiation by researchers, is we want to work with active researchers. And Eurodoc is one of our member organizations who is contributing through tangible work. That means also that the researchers of your organization who engage in an activity in ISE gain a visibility. We have most recently approved a new work structure paper where we have engaged that the people will be highlighted on our website. The link to your CVs will be put in place, and so on. I will not detail the items now. So once the ERC was established, the next question for ISE was, what now? Our main objective was to get an ERC. We got it. So should we disappear or should we continue? And in fact, everybody agreed that ISE should continue to be the organization supporting basic research or frontier research. That was the first matter. So any topic related to that will get the support from ISE. And of course, all other transversal matters who concern the research communities can be addressed by ISE. Currently, we have, and now I step to this other point of my presentation, some really main files are, of course, always the ERC, because we believe the ERC still needs to be followed up to be supported, and maybe also a little bit to be criticized, not in the sense of a bad criticism, but we believe that any organization needs constantly to be revised, assessed, improved to become even better. It's like a researcher, so there is no reason research organizations who fund researchers or who manage researchers don't do their own assessment. So the ERC is still one of our first priorities, and as the ERC will soon have 20 years, it will be a main issue to involve ourselves in that. The second priority subject currently and file is researchers' careers, in particular early researchers' careers. There are many definitions about, we had a new one yesterday presented by Cost, who now has put an age limit instead of putting a limit like in the ERC, for example, which is related not to the age, but to the date of your thesis, of your PhD. There were many reasons to take these decisions at the time they were taken, and this, of course, can again be discussed because things evolve. So researchers' careers is a main file. The ISE organization released a manifesto in September, just the month where I arrived. It was my first task was to disseminate widely the manifesto. And we are asking individuals or proposing individuals and organizations to sign the manifesto. This is still open for signature. It takes very often many months to get enough signatures to be really representative of what is requested. Of course, this kind of documents are always a compromise of many different opinions, but I believe the document really bears the main message is that something has to be done for researchers' careers. It is not possible that there are still situations, and you are one of our member organizations knowing that very well, where the researcher is facing either administrative difficulties or difficulties to get money for the research, or difficulties, and that's still very, very important in most countries, to get a contract, something which merits to be called contract and not a kind of bit of grant or bit of contract of some months, which doesn't allow you to really have a longer term perspective. Like I used to say, research needs time, in particular basic or frontier research. It needs trust, and it needs risk-taking from those who give us the money, and from the researchers themselves, of course, also, because you put on stake your own career. If you take out a topic in research which is maybe a bit too risky, and if you don't get publications, and it is still something which is important, you will be blocked in your career. But saying that, a little advice, always try to have that I was taught by very early in my career, but by a very nice boss I had in a lab. He said to me, you always have to have three projects. One, which is the important one, is the high risk, high gain. Because of course, if you take high risk, you have more chances to have high gain. Another one is the in-between, where you know more or less where you go and you can have results. And that means that you can publish or make you known yourself or be invited to congresses. And the third one is the very, very secured one, which is easy to be done in between two other experiments or whatever activities in your research activity. That helps you, in fact, to prepare the future and to path the future. And that helps you also in your organization on how to ask for money and funds at national, regional, or maybe European level. That's a little, let's say, advice on the way. So back to the priorities of ISC, researchers' careers, the manifesto, and we know that the European Commissioner who just resigned because she was called to be Prime Minister in Bulgaria, which is her home country, she was very supportive to this topic, and I very much hope, and we need to work on it with you and with other of our member organizations, of course, Marie Curie Alumni Association, the Young European Academy, and now we had ECRs who joined also. So you are our key pillar to work on these items, because precisely now that the commissioner left, even if we have two appointed commissioners, the portfolio of Maria Gabriel was cut in two, because it was a huge portfolio. So I will let Pil pronounce the name of the commissioner taking care of research and innovation, because she explained us that we do not pronounce it correctly.
Yeah, not West. I cannot pronounce it wrong. It's Vestager.
Yeah. Vestager, because in Brussels everybody say Vestager or Vestager. It depends. Yeah. Well, so can you repeat it? That we learn it. Phil?
Vestager. You
Vestager.
don't pronounce the T. The T is silent in Danish. That's a piece of language.
Okay. So she was appointed for taking care of research and innovation. Possibly it's an interim situation so that somebody else will be appointed. But the time until the end of the term of the current commission, collège, the commissaire, is short. It's a year from now. It will change. So I don't know how they will manage. But it will be very important now in this in-between situation where we lost Maria Gabriel, that we precisely are even more active than in the past on this question of researchers' careers, knowing that Maria Gabriel had put in the pipeline the idea of a partnership program. That means she wanted to motivate and to commit the member states to invest money and time and people into the item of researchers' careers. So I will not go into detail now. If we have time, I can a bit later come back to this. And next file, which is very important for us, which we consider more and more as a transversal, even beyond the current framework program Horizon Europe item, is the so-called widening countries or widening participation. You know, that is mostly the so-called new member states which are no more new, but still, and there are some countries like, for example, Portugal and Greece who belong to that. But the perimeter of the widening countries anyway in Horizon Europe has been enlarged. I will not do the whole list of those member countries. What we believe is that a fair Europe needs to offer opportunities to everybody wherever he or she is in whatever country. And of course, we all know that in some countries you have better conditions, better infrastructures, and also maybe a more stimulating environment than in other countries. So it has to be a concern that we identify and stimulate everybody who has good ideas, who has a profile for excellence research, to be funded and to be identified and to be supported and to have good research contracts and working contracts. So that's widening, you see, is tightly related to researchers' careers, but it's about how to organize a framework program, for example. Do we really need specific programs with dedicated funds, which we believe in ISE are anyway too small to really allow researchers from those countries to step up and do better research? Or should we think much more about how to help them to get access to any part of the framework program? Or do we need both? We have currently a working group which is finalizing the report. It has been working quite a lot of time. By the way, it was a task force within the working group of Horizon Europe, but that will stay a top priority, because it's not enough to do a report. We need to follow up after that. And of course, we need to do some lobby activity that it's known by the most of the people around the European research area, but in particular, of course, our institutions. It's not only about the European Commission, but also about, for example, the European Parliament or our member states. And I will come back to this, how it functions. Another priority for us, I mentioned basic research, is not only the ERC is important for basic research, collaborative research is important. That means that the opportunities for, in particular, researchers in academic research, that means public organizations, mostly universities, have, we consider in Horizon Europe, little room for involving themselves in collaborative research. It has been very much driven by innovation, and now more and more, by the way, big companies, more and more calls for lower TRL levels, because they also say they need academic research or basic research for their own innovation processes. So that's currently a very, very active matter. We are putting in place a small task force on that, and maybe we would need people from your organization, from Eurodoc. So this is something I have on my to-do list for the very coming days to launch that. And then there are many, many other topics we are very much interested in. And of course, one of the topics is science diplomacy. Why? Because we consider ISE is by its basics a science diplomacy organization. That means we want to use the knowledge of science and the knowledge and the engagement of researchers, active researchers, to, I don't like very much sometimes the word influence the European Commission or other institutions, but to advise them, to guide them, because of course it's very difficult once you have left your lab, or if you never was in a lab, were in a lab because you are not a scientist, you're illegal, you have done some, I don't know, political sciences or something where you left the research field. You need to listen to what is ongoing in the labs. In the labs is symbolic because there are many research fields, in particular in social science and humanities, where you are not in a lab, but still you are in the research field. So that's science diplomacy is something we believe is very important. And there too, we have a report which has been elaborated since the last years, which should be finalized this year. And of course, this is a very complex topic, how to do that in the most integral way so that we really represent the needs and the thoughts of the research communities and the expertise. So now I may switch because time is passing faster than we always think, to the third part of, or the new part of my presentation I wanted really to address. Science diplomacy is a way to talk about influence. And in fact, when people are in Brussels or come to Brussels, their idea is, how can I influence this or that policymaker in the European Commission? Where in the European Commission? Because it's a huge institution. I will very quickly explain it in some minutes. Or should I talk to a deputy in the European Parliament? And if so, to which one is the right one? Or should I do something at my home country at the ministry level? Because the ministry is then represented in the council, of course. So these are questions you need a little bit to understand how it works, to be better able to have a say and to be listened to and to speak up wherever possibilities are represented. And of course, it's a quite complex world, this Brussels ecosystem, some people call it. So I wanted to give you a small insight into that. And of course, if ever you want to know more, we can imagine with Sebastian and Phil to do trainings or whatever necessary on this topic. But with a small insight, you can already do a lot. Of course, you need to take time from your already stressful days in a very competitive research field for this, to learn about it, to maybe come to Brussels or maybe go elsewhere where an important meeting happens, because it's the presidency of this or that country of the European Union, of the Council of the European Union, and there is an important event in this or that capital or city of the country. So these are small tips I would like to give you. But before going into explaining you the procedures, I wanted a little bit to highlight that there are some basic principles. And one basic principle is, like in science policy, you have to have ethical behavior. That means you are not there to defend your personal own interests. You are always on behalf of a group of people, of a research community, a science community. An issue like the researchers' careers, you represent an organization or a group of people, which maybe informal, like Initiative for Science in Europe was in the very many first years before it became a formal association, not so long ago, some 5 years ago. So that is a little bit the one other aspect I really wanted to underline, that you need some ethical principles to be really able to do a good job and to gain credibility at the policy makers level. You must demonstrate that you are really motivated by a general interest. You must demonstrate that you really know the topic, that you have a legitimacy because you have consulted your peers and you are talking on behalf of a group of persons and so on. So this is, I believe, really important, that you have this kind of principles. I will come back to this a little bit later. Now, nobody interrupted me, so, but you can still, no worry, but I will take some, maybe 5 to 10 minutes to explain you how it functions. There are different levels or different, let's say, spaces where research policy and the decisions about where to put money or if to put money into research happen, depending on the organization of a country. Of course, you have sometimes regions who are very important, who have a say and have their own budgets. You have the national level, which of course is there all over Europe, the important space where the most of the money are put on the table and decided. This is the level where member states decided together many years ago to grow the budget dedicated to research up to 3%. The 3% should not all come from public money, they should also come from private money. So the challenge for member states is to stimulate their companies, small, medium, or big companies, to put money into research. And I underlined research because innovation is another item. So, and of course, it didn't reach it yet, but we should still work on it. So that's also motivation of ISC, saying we have to insist on the fact that we still didn't reach the 3%, with some exceptions. Some countries have reached those 3% or are even beyond, but most of the countries, including a big country like France, are not yet there. So that's also something which is important. So member states level, and then of course you have the European institutions, where in the Treaty of the European Union, there are articles dedicated to research saying that there should be a framework program. Of course, these are quite short texts. It's helpful to read them. It's not always easy to understand them because, in fact, there is always in legal text a room for interpretation. And we should be happy about that. Some people are saying, well, the texts are not clear enough, we should fix it much more. But no. In fact, if the ERC was possible, it's precisely because in the early 2000s, many people said, well, maybe there is a way to interpret the treaty differently, and this would allow to create a program funding for basic research. I would do a little bracket here. Why? Because in the treaty, it says it must be competitive. And that has led in the many years of an existing framework program to the interpretation that it was more innovation oriented and that it was more private companies driven. And in fact, we find out that this could be interpreted as putting into competition research. This is also doing competitiveness. So that's a little anecdote. That's how we made it possible that the ERC could be built up in the many years ago. So back now to the institutions. So in Brussels, of course, you have still an antenna in Strasbourg for the European Parliament, but the three main institutions are the European Commission, the European Parliament, and the Council. And it is important that you retain that for research, the two decision-maker institutions are the Parliament and the Council. The Council, represented through the member states in a so-called Competitiveness Council, where the ministers in charge of research and innovation meet together. And in the Parliament, there is a dedicated a commission, which is called committee, which is called ITRE for industry. So you will see that there is not only research, I for industry, T for transport, R for research, and E for environment or energy, who dedicates time, where there are many deputies who say, I'm interested in this topic. So these are your main target, those deputies in the ITRE or ITRE committee. And here a little advice: if there is one of your country, a deputy of your country, try to contact this person and tell about what Eurodoc is doing, what you are doing, what your research is about. In fact, the deputies are very much demanding for that, because they say, if we have to take decisions, we have to know better what the challenges, what the problems are, and so on. We were told last year by one of the Romanian deputies, Victor Negrescu, that he would love that we bring some young researchers and less young researchers to Brussels to explain, to tell about topics where they do research, but they have political decisions on the table. And they, for example, on agriculture, if they better understand what the current challenges are, where the progress is, or the future developments in research and innovation or science and technology are announced, they would maybe take better decisions. So you can do it at a personal level by trying to meet one or two deputies from your country. You can come to Brussels and try to meet, if you're 2 or 3 out of the same organization, or your what I call sister associations like Marie Curie or Young Academy, like I already mentioned. It's even better, because they see that we really support the general interest. So, and in fact, in the decision-making process, where a framework program, for example, is decided, those who must decide, yes, we agree with the document which was presented, are the member states and the parliament. What is the role of the Commission? The Commission has 2 powers, the proposition power, and the executive power. And it doesn't look like, but it's a huge power, because it's the Commission who is drafting the framework program. It's the Commission who is drafting the so-called work programs and the calls, where you can then, as a researcher, apply or not apply if your topic or your needs are not in the call, for example. So the Commission is the institution who drafts, who thinks, who drafts, and it's also the institution who very much consults the research institutions, individual researchers. There are many, many things ongoing. If we have time, I can mention some of those where ISE in particular is invested, is represented. So, and then once the framework program is approved, it's the Commission who executes it. I'm seeing, I have a question, but I didn't have time to read it. I will ask Sebastian. I'm just finishing that. So again, also in the Commission, it's good to have contacts, or it's good to be represented in the different, I will call it in a generic way, fora the Commission is putting in place to listen to the researchers or to representative of the researchers. I will mention 2, and then I will stop. I will mention 2 where ISE is represented. The one is really very strongly driven by the Commission. The Commission put in place a so-called ERA forum, ERA for European Research Area, where at the very beginning, the Commission invited the member states to appoint representatives, but very quickly, the stakeholders also claimed to be there, and the Commission agreed, of course. And among the stakeholders, ISE has a representative, which is a researcher member from the Marie Curie Association, but who is tightly working with another representative from another researchers association, which is the ERC Grantees Association. And what is very nice today, in respect to many years ago, is that these people really interconnect and inform each other about their thoughts, ongoing activities, initiatives, or whatever. Many years ago, information was like a kind of power, so we don't share it. If I have the information, I have more power than my neighbor. And it was even so among researchers. This has really changed, including the Commission has done a lot of improvements in that sense, that it shares much more and much more easily information, which is important for researchers. So that's the ERA forum. We have Renaud Jolivet, and we can, through Renaud, of course, pass messages and help him also to represent the widest interests of our member organizations. There is another platform which is in place. It was very strongly driven by the Commission, who now is a bit in retreat because they want the stakeholders to have the say, the lead, which is COARA. This is the Coalition for the Research Assessment Reform. This has been a Commission-driven process, but with a huge investment. I'm sure Sebastian could speak much better on this because he was very much involved in that. But this is about research assessment, about open science, about publications, and about other activities that researchers are now involved in, which should be considered when assessing an individual researcher, when assessing a team, when assessing a lab, when assessing a university or a research organization. And it's also about assessing organizations like funding agencies or research performers. So these are two platforms where we are very active. And of course, we can always do better. And what we want currently to do is our two representatives in COARA, it's Thomas Susi, to be supported by a small group of advisors, so that if they have a topic they don't really understand, they can quite quickly ad hoc ask this small group to give advice or to consult internally to our organizations what the position should be, which we should defend or at least speak up to say what is important in our eyes. So that was the two other things I wanted to mention. And just to finish, and then maybe the question which I saw highlighted can be said. I started by saying that we need to have an ethical behavior be integral. There are little things you have to know when you go to see people from these institutions, whoever they are. And these are basic principles in any relation between human beings, from my point of view. But of course, you have to be respectful. I'm saying that because sometimes people are upset about something, and of course, it can be understood from our side. But never forget that on the other side, for example, Commission people sometimes are really, I would say, aggressed. They are human beings and they really believe they are doing their best to do something. And maybe we disagree completely. So the idea is not to be aggressive, but really to explain. Well, I will very quickly say you have to be coherent. You have to have good arguments. You have to be honest. You have to be comprehensive, of course. And always when you have a meeting with somebody, prepare it. Try to know who the person is you are going to meet and to put yourself in the shoes of the person. What is the profile of the person? What are the interests? For example, typically a deputy who is covering all the items the European Parliament is dealing with. You have to find out why he or she is interested in research, for example, and member of the ITRE committee, so that when you meet the person, you are better prepared to have a good dialogue and to build a trust relation. And I will finish with that. And maybe now, hopefully, time for questions. Sorry if I was a bit long. Hopefully I was enough clear.
Mm-hmm. That was very nice. Thank you very much, Monica. The first question was from the chat, and so maybe Natalia can speak out herself.
Yes, thank you very much, first of all, dear Ms. Tittel, for your speech. And I would like to ask you, maybe it will be possible to specify about new or ongoing projects, conferences, seminars, etc., where early career researchers could participate, maybe especially for Ukrainians and also for European researchers. And thank you very much for your answer.
Thank you very much for this question, Natalia. It's a very, very recurrent question. And the main difficulty there is there are too many things ongoing. That's my personal opinion. I mean, I've had in several positions this question and tried in the past to create a table where all the events were listed and so on. And very quickly my heads said, well, stop it. We will never make it to be all over. There are some main events organized by the Commission. For example, I will mention the R&I days, the Research and Innovation Days, which most of the time happen in September, but I think this year the dates have changed a little bit, so I don't have them in mind. But if you do a doodle, Google R&I days, European Commission, you will find the dates. You can inscribe yourself. They started this the year before the COVID. There was the first event in presence in Brussels, which was very successful. There were hundreds of people who came to Brussels. Then the 2 years of COVID, of course, it was virtual. And I don't know if this year they do it again in presence, because in presence, of course, you can meet much more people than ever on the screen. And that is of course from my point of view, one of the added values, that you might meet people you didn't expect to meet in the corridor or in one of the seminars or the workshops which is taking place, because there are many things taking place in parallel. So that's a place maybe where it's useful to come. Of course, it depends what you want to do. Then there is another event which I like to do publicity, which is ESOF, which is a very different event. This is the European Science Forum, which happens every 2 years in a capital in Europe, organized by local people and by a committee which is driven by Euroscience, which is another association based in Strasbourg, by the way. Why ESOF, the initial idea was to have in Europe something like the American AAAS. The American, I never know the AAAS, but S is for science, and the first A for America. But this is a huge event where 10,000 of people come, and we wanted to have something similar in Europe. And of course, in Europe, we have always a problem. We don't support our own initiatives. And so I believe it's still important, and the Commission is coming. Many people from the Commission are coming to the ESOF conferences, forums every 2 years. And so there is also a huge opportunity there to meet people, at least from the Commission, not necessarily deputies from the Parliament. This is another topic. Maybe another example, the European Parliament organizes many things, and by the way, proposes to organize things. And we have currently a proposal to organize an event about researchers' careers in the European Parliament, which initially we wanted. I proposed to do it in springtime, and then it was not able, but I will have a meeting next week, and we are planning to discuss about organizing this possibly in September. And there are different opportunities in the Parliament. Either you know a deputy, and you have an idea. I want to do, I don't know what your research field is, Natalia. What is your research field?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. I'm Doctor of Philosophy in the field of Public Government and Administration, political science.
Yeah, okay. So imagine you want to do an event in the Parliament to raise awareness of the deputies on your research fields and your research communities. And you try to meet one, you get an appointment, you meet, you propose. If you have chosen the right deputy, if you were convincing enough, possibly he or she will propose you, okay, let's try to do something. And then you have several possibilities. More and more these last years, because this overwhelming number of events is to propose a short event. That means 2 hours, not a full day, but 2 hours, 2.5 hours. For example, could be enough, because they don't have time now to be a full day in an event. So this would be frustrating. So if you do it in the right moment, and where the deputy, and in particular the assistants to the deputy, will help you in organizing that. But there is also something which merits to be highlighted, is STOA. That's a special organization within the Parliament dedicated to science and technology, STOA. And
Monica, may I interrupt you?
Yes.
Because this is very, very specific on the time, and I can see we are running short on time, and Philippe has stand up for a long time.
Okay.
And I've also seen that in the chat there has been some very detailed suggestions directed at Natalia as well. So if we can hand the word to Philippe, such that he also has a chance to ask.
Yes, Philippe, no problem. Thank you.
It would be great. And now my internet froze.
Thank you,
Thank
Sebastian. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for the talk. Very interesting. I have a question that is a bit more technical. So when you're giving advice about EU policy, so do you take in consideration a target country and use that as an example of a suggestion to give, or you try to keep it as vague and general as possible, as usually happen? I mean, what is the best approach to advising EU policy?
I always say it's important to have alliances, not to go alone. And from my point of view, and that's something also in ISC, we have been, this was before I arrived in ISC, we have been trying to push is to build a coalition of associations, that not each association goes alone. And finally, we defend very often the same ideas, more money for research or widening or whatever. So if it is on a research topic or your research field, find alliances, find people, researchers from other countries who think like you, so that you can demonstrate that it is not only the interest of this or that country, but that this or that concern of your country, for example. There might be there are for sure other countries who have similar concerns, and you can very easily find where your common concerns are to defend them. So that's also something which is very important. Find alliances. They can be of all kinds of geometries. I mean, sometimes you will find on a given topic an alliance with 3 other countries, and on another topic, this will be 3 other countries, not necessarily the same. So, but what is important is that it has a critical mass, let's say, enough people. Yeah, I hope I answered.
Yeah.
Maybe also to highlight from the chat, there were some more follow-ups on the ESOF conference. That's of course also organized in collaboration with our mutual partner Euroscience.
Yes.
And so yeah, that's really something that is worth highlighting. That's really one of the big European events that is really very worthwhile attending, also for all early career researchers.
Yeah, it's really an event for researchers, by the way. And what is important is that there are still really important people from the Commission coming there. You can meet the general director. Usually, I mean, now we have a new general director at the DG Research. So, but I suppose he will also travel to the next ESOP. Yeah. Precisely because they listen to researchers there. That's why they come.
Yes.
Yeah.
Pete has a hand up.
Yeah.
So Pete also wants to ask something, I think.
Now I want to add a comment on, you mentioned Koala and referred to Sebastian. And then generally, Koala is the Coalition of Advancing Research Assessment, and they are just about to launch their working groups. And Eurodoc is submitting, together with many others, but Eurodoc is submitting a proposal for such a working group, putting focus on early career researchers. And this work is led by Sebastian. And I wanted to say there that if you are interested in being part of this work and supporting these initiatives, then we would recommend that you join the working group on research assessment and career paths in Eurodoc, which is how we in Eurodoc streamline, you can say, and coordinates our contributions to this, both to the working group suggested by Eurodoc, but also to other working groups in Koala, where Eurodoc is partners. And similar, if you're generally interested in the topic of how research and society intervenes, and science diplomacy, science policy, research communication, and stuff like that, then I would suggest that you join the working group in research and society. Both working groups are currently probably on summer vacation or dormant until we'll start up again in late August, early September. And you can find more information on Eurodoc's webpage about how to join these working groups. But also, since I also want to advertise that next week Eurodoc has a number of seminars, panel sessions being streamed online, because next week is the Eurodoc conference. And you can find more information on Eurodoc's webpage on how to stream, how to watch these. They will be streamed on Eurodoc's YouTube channel. And you are more than welcome to distribute these. For those of you who are active in your national associations of Eurodoc, distribute them to as many as possible, distribute them to colleagues, distribute them to friends, and even distribute it to family. Like, it will be streamed on YouTube. There's not a limit. The more the merrier that can learn about and hear about and partake in a discussion about conditions of ECRs.
And in addition, you may also highlight the webinar coming up by ISE, presenting more details about QARA, about the coalition mentioned. So there's some overlaps and some things that go really very nicely hand in hand, as you can see. So yeah, the information on those webinars is also being shared with you by email while you were attending the webinar. So
if I can add something here, Sebastian. One difficulty you will be confronted to is that there are working groups all over. Many working groups, and I will take the example of researchers' careers, many of these different initiatives, the QARA, the ERA Forum, Eurodoc yourself, ISE, have a working group on researchers' careers. And of course, the focus is different. That's what you have to understand. In QARA is really the focus about assessment. So I'm telling that because we had internally to ISE discussions about that. Isn't it an application? And in fact, no. First of all, it's not the same people. Secondly, it's not the same objective. And that's also something in ISE we try to clarify what are the ISE working groups and task force objectives. And that's something I will send soon to our members so that it can be easier also for you to say, well, in fact, I prefer to be in the working of QARA because it's about assessment and that's my interest, or I prefer to be in the working group of my national association or whatever. But try to make yourself a picture where you have your personal priorities before you decide to go somewhere, but we need you.
So the reason why I advertise the working group on research assessment and career paths in Eurodoc is that it is in general open to all early career researchers. Yes. And when we move from this to Eurodoc's engagement more formally in QARA, or Eurodoc's engagement in ISE, then it is the board of Eurodoc that either does the representation or appoints. So it's not the members that the members for the ISE working groups, they come through Eurodoc, but they or through another organization, but it is formally a decision that is made by the board of Eurodoc.
Are there any more questions or anything else that you as a participants want to ask Monica, want to also provide for the webinar, want to put in? Anything else you would like to mention or ask? So I don't see any raised hands at the moment. I don't see much going on in terms of questions in the chat anymore. So it seems everybody is quite quite satisfied with the content and maybe probably quite filled up with everything that was said. To probably also check out later some more of the details. So yeah, with that, let's then maybe conclude the webinar. Thank you very much for the very nice overview, Monica. Thanks for being with us. Thank you everyone for joining. And yeah, I wish you a very nice rest of the week and hope to see you soon, maybe at our conference next week, since we're also meeting there in Uppsala. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Sebastian and Phil, and to all the participants.